Okay, so in this particular chapter, we'll talk about VPN gateway. So in this particular specific video, what we'll do is we'll create a VPN gateway between two GCP projects, and we'll create a IPsec connection between them. And later on, in our second part, we'll create a static routing between both those particular projects using VPN. So here, what we need to do is we need to create a VPN gateway at both ends. So this is the GCP end at one end, and similarly, we will consider the on-premise also to be another GCP project. And this GCP project will also create a VPN gateway. And both these VPN gateways will have an IP address associated with them. And both these IP addresses will also share a pre-shared key that will be used to create our VPN tunnel using IPsec. So let's see how we can do that. So let's go back to our console. So here what I have are basically two projects that I have created within my organization. And within both these projects, what I'll do first is I'll create a VPC network. And after that, I will create an external IP address for both these particular projects. So let's start off by creating a VPC for our first project. And here I've created a VPC for my first project, and it just contains one subnet that is in US Central. And it has a range of 192.168.0.0/24. So this is the first VPC that we've created. And let's go to the other project. So here is the other project within which I have created another VPC called VPC2. And this has a subnet in US East 1. And this has an IP range of 10.0.0.0/24. So the next thing that we'll do is we'll go back to our first project, our first VPC, and we'll create an external IP, which we'll use for our VPN gateway. So let's click on create external IP. Click on reserve static IP address. And we'll just call this as VPN external IP1, and we'll not attach to anything, and we'll let this remain as regional. And let's click on reserve now. And similarly, we'll do the same for our second project as well. Here I'm in my second project. Let's create an external IP address here. Click on reserve static address. We'll just call this as VPN. And let's go down. And what we need to choose is basically the region. So we have our VPC in US East 1. So let's choose US East 1 here as well. And everything else remains the same. Let's click on reserve and let's reserve the static IP address. So here you can see our second external IP address has been created. So the next thing that we need to do is we need to go to our first project and we need to go to VPN. So let's click on create VPN connection here. And here what we'll choose is the classic VPN option. Click on continue. And let's create our VPN connection. So here we need to choose a network. So we have already a VPC created. So let's choose that. And our VPC is in US Central 1. And here we need to choose the external IP that we've created. So let's choose the VPN external IP1 that we had previously created. And now we need to create the tunnel. Now to create the tunnel, you also need the peer IP address. That is the IP address of the second network that we've created. So let's just copy this external IP address. And let's just paste this remote peer IP address here. And here we also need to generate and copy a pre-shared key. Now this is something that we'll use while creating the tunnel at the other end as well. So let's copy this and let's paste it somewhere safe. And now for this particular chapter, what we'll choose is basically the static route. So let's click on route paste. And here we need to add the static route of our other network that we have. So let's go back to our second network and let's get the routes that we have. So this is basically the route that we need. So let's copy this and let's paste it here. Now, since we have only one subnet, so we just need to paste one particular range here. And that's the only thing we need to worry about. Let's click on create. And similarly, let's go to our second project. And here we'll do the same as well. Let's go to our VPN. Click on VPN. And let's create a VPN connection here. And we'll similarly create a classic VPN. Click on continue. And here we'll choose VPC2 and we'll choose it in US East 1. And let's choose the IP address. So this is the external IP2 that we have. And again, we need to create a tunnel. So let's create a particular tunnel. Now, again, we need the remote peer IP address. So this is the IP address of the first network that we have, VPC network that we have. So let's go to our first project and let's get the external IP from there. So let's copy this and let's paste it in our second project. And similarly, we'll also copy the pre-shared key that we have. Let's copy this pre-shared key and let's paste it there. And finally, for this, we'll choose route based as well. Now here we need to choose the remote network IP range. So let's go back to our first project. Let's go to the VPC networks and let's paste this particular range. So this is the CIDR range for our particular subnet for our first project. And all that we need to do is we just need to paste this particular range over here. And let's click on create. And after a few minutes, you can see that there's a tunnel established between both of them. So the next thing that we need to do is we need to go to our VPC. So this is again in our first project. You can go to your routes here and you should be able to see an extra route for our particular VPN tunnel. And here you can see that there's an extra route. Now this has been statically created while we created that particular VPN. So now what we can do is we can actually create a virtual machine in both, and using just the private IP address, we can communicate with those particular private IP addresses. So let's do that. So here I'm in my first particular project. Let's create a instance here. So let's go to our instance and let's create an instance now. And similarly, we'll go to our second project. We'll do the same here as well. So our second project is in US East 1. So let's choose US East 1. Let's choose E2 micro and let's change the boot disk to standard persistent. Let's click on select. And let's also see the networking. So if you go to the networking tab, you should see that it's connected to the VPC2. So let's click on create instance. And similarly, let's do the same for our first project as well. Now here our first project has a VPC New Central 1 as a subnet. Let's go to E2 micro. Click on change here. Let's make this as standard persistent select. And let's create this instance as well. So here the second instance has an internal IP of 10.0.0.2. So let's copy this. Let's go to our first project and let's SSH into this particular machine. And now let's do a ping for that particular machine. So let's ping 10.0.0.2. And here you can see that it's able to connect to that particular machine. So here using a VPN gateway, we were able to connect two VPCs in two distinct projects. So using static routing. So in our next chapter, we'll see how we can do this using a BGP protocol. So that's it for this lecture. I will see you in the next.